Good afternoon, guys. We'll start in a couple of minutes. Let others join. Okay. So last week we discussed regarding Ethereum platform. We just got started with Ethereum. And then we saw how Ethereum is different from Bitcoin in terms of the programming functionality we get on Ethereum. And second thing, we saw how Ethereum has two types of accounts. One is externally owned account and other is contract account. And then we saw the functionality or the programmability aspect can be used to build smart contracts. And then we saw a couple of smart contract use cases, like selling some tickets on online for a concert without the challenge of double spending of a ticket, double selling of a ticket. Yes. And then we saw how Ethereum can be used to build applications, which is a combination of multiple smart contracts. Of course, we'll discuss more deep on smart contracts, the coding part in coming sessions. But at least I gave you an overview that whenever a smart contract is deployed, there will be a application binary interface and bytecode which will be generated. And this bytecode is something which will be deployed on the network. And whenever a smart contract is triggered, any transaction triggered by a smart contract, if it is to be validated, then every node in the network should execute the smart contract. And then if the output of their execution, individual execution, is matching with the transaction data which they received, then they will validate the transaction. So now we are moving to discuss about gas. And this gas is nothing but the transaction fee. In Bitcoin, because we can just do a transaction of some amount, the amount is fixed, and a percentage of that amount for a given transaction will become the base for us to calculate the transaction fee. Say, for example, you're transacting one Bitcoin, you're transferring one Bitcoin to other wallet. Now, in order to validate that transaction, you have put a transaction fee of your interest like 0.5% or 0.7% to get it prioritized. Now, 0.7% of a transaction is pretty clear and things used to go smooth. But if you look at Ethereum, there are some conditions which are to be checked before validating a transaction, right? So because of that, all the nodes in the network are consuming some computation power, and this computation power may change for a given amount, because for doing $1 for doing one BTC transaction, there may be 1,000 lines of smart contract. But for doing zero point 0.1 BTC, there may be 10 lines of smart contract. So there is additional parameter which should be considered to calculate a transaction fee, and that is where the concept of gas comes. Okay, so let me share the screen. So yeah. Okay, now the transaction fee, instead of calling it as transaction fee, it is called as what to say, the gas consumed for execution of a smart contract. That is how people say it, because every computation that occurs as a result of a transaction on the Ethereum network incurs a fee. Because even though you have built smart contracts, which infrastructure are you using to execute them? The public infrastructure, right? So Ethereum network is a public infrastructure. There are a lot of other people who are maintaining nodes. So why should they execute your smart contract? Because they will be getting a transaction fee, right, for that particular execution. So this fee is paid in a denomination called as gas, and gas is the unit used to measure the fees required for a particular computation. Okay, so there is a mathematical formula which is used to calculate transaction fee in Ethereum. Transaction fee, of course, will be in Ether only. Okay, but to calculate this transaction fee, there is a formula. What is that formula? Gas limit into gas price. Okay, I'll give you some realistic example, of course, but all you need to understand from this slide is gas is a unit to measure the fee required for a particular computation on Ethereum network. And let's see what is this gas about by taking a real-time example. For example, there is a sender and there is a receiver. Okay, now a sender and receiver are two business partners. Okay, and they have written a smart contract between themselves, among themselves. And what is that? Sorry, between themselves. And what is that? After 1 year, if the transaction, if the repayment is happening, then the interest should be 2%. Okay, this is the condition. Usually people follow some promissory note or some agreement between them for a money transaction, right? But on Ethereum, instead of a promissory note based on paper, you have created a smart contract on blockchain network. And what are the conditions written in it? The time taken into interest per month plus the principal amount. That is the amount which should be transacted. So now the sender, okay, now the sender has sent a amount. Sorry, sender initiated the smart contract called as pay. So he clicked on pay button. Now once he clicks on the pay button, what happened is the transaction should get executed. But how much money? And what are the conditions to transact that? So all those conditions are written as lines of code in the smart contract. So now for that to happen, for that all the nodes in the network should execute the smart contract, right? Then only a transaction can be confirmed. So every computation power utilized on the network as a whole are calculated in terms of gas. Okay, so say for example, for a operation X, the consumption of gas is 200. Sorry, 50. Okay, so once execution happened, 50 gas is consumed. Second, the next operation, 30 gas is consumed. But at a given point of time, the sender may not know how much gas his smart contract might consume. So that is why in Ethereum, the gas is sent extra. Okay. Even though you sent extra, after execution, after the transaction gets complete, the remaining gas will be sent back to the sender's account. Okay, so this is happy path. That means you have put more than what is required to execute a smart contract by all the nodes in the network. Then the confirmation, the transaction gets confirmed, of course, by all the nodes. Then receiver gets a confirmation about the transaction, and whatever gas is remaining will go to the sender. This is all good. Now imagine you have put 250 gas, but the problem is there are lot of operations in a smart contract where it exhausted the 250 gas, and still there are few more operations to be executed before confirmation. So what will happen? The state change will not happen because all smart contract is not executed. So the same state, so just before the transaction getting started, whatever state is there, the same state will be there with the sender, and the receiver will not receive, and the transaction gets failed. Now you may get a doubt, sir, you are saying the transaction gets failed, but what happens to this gas? You have spent it, right? So it is your responsibility to put more gas. So because you have got into the smart contract before deploying it on real network, there is a test net where you can quickly deploy and you can get some estimated number of gas which the smart contract is consuming. So in that case, of course, this error will not happen. But if by mistake, the gas which you have put as a limit in the smart contract gets exhaust in between, all the gas consumed will not come back. Okay. Why? Because all the gas is consumed already, right? Even though whether it is partial execution of smart contract or not, the computation power is utilized, right? So for that, the gas will be paid. So any questions so far on gas? So Venkat, make sure you come to session early, okay? Just for you, I can't explain again and again, right? So I'll give you overview. Gas is nothing but, gas is a mechanism, okay? Gas is a mechanism to calculate transaction fee. And gas is something which is consumed for every computation power utilized for executing a specific operation written in the smart contract. Okay, now for example, if your smart contract is too large and the gas which you have put in the smart contract is less than what is required, then the transaction will revert back to the original state and the transaction fails. So it is your responsibility to put more gas, because even if some part of the gas is left after execution of the transaction, it will be given back. So you need not worry even if you put little extra. Okay, so this is how. So now you understood, right? So the gas consumed. So in this case, you have put gas limit, and into the gas price changes with time. Okay, and at that given point of time, if gas price is 20 gwei, gwei is nothing but denomination of ether. Okay, so like how we have for rupee, you have paisa, right? Similarly, for ether, the denomination is gwei. So this gas price is dynamic. It is calculated by the network at that given point of time. So whatever gas consumed into the individual gas price equal to transaction fee. Now let me give you a metaphor, okay, for easy understanding. So what happens to the gas left? The gas left will come back. Okay. Is transaction fee a necessary or is it only for priority? No, no, in Ethereum, it is a necessity. Okay. Because you are executing your programs, you are executing your programs. It's a necessity. It's not priority. Okay. In Bitcoin, it is a priority. Who will control the gas price? The network, the protocol. If we want to transfer 250, then we have to transact amount of 250.001. If there is one operator in the middle, there is no operator here. There is an operation. These are nothing but the code in the smart contract. Okay, this is nothing but the code in the smart contract. Okay, gas is paid by the node owner? No, the sender. Why will node pay? Node pays the gas. The one which will add the block will get the transaction fee. So the miner will get the gas. Sender will pay the amount for gas because he is the one who is consuming it. Okay, is it clear? I'll give you one example. Okay, I'll give you one example. Okay, imagine is the gas sent by each sender constant? No, of course, right? It depends on the smart contract which he is triggering. See, the gas limit will be defined in the smart contract itself by the developer who developed it. Okay. Is there any limit for sending gas? Of course, no. It's up to you. You can put whatever gas you want. The remaining gas will come back after execution. So you need not worry much on the gas limit. But why will you put more money just for the sake of transaction, right? So you can optimally put some X amount which you can decide on when you are testing the smart contract. Okay. So before deploying on the main net, everyone will test it on testnet. So for testnet, you need not spend any real ether. Okay. So you will understand this concept when we are doing hands-on. Okay. How the gas, who is paying for the gas and all. Now imagine you want to meet your friend and you want to do a business transaction. Okay. So your friend is in other location. I'm just giving an example to correlate. Okay. Now you started traveling and you went there and you have done the transaction. Okay. Now imagine your bike needs some petrol to travel, right? So whatever petrol you have filled, so imagine 250 is the petrol. 250 into some 70 rupees or 75 rupees, whatever the price of petrol. Okay. Now, so this is gas is nothing but petrol. Gas price is nothing but petrol price. Okay. So he started traveling some distance. After travel some distance, he reached the destination. So whatever petrol he has spent for the travel will be spent. All remaining petrol will be within the bike only, right? So see, this is for the transaction. Whatever transaction he wants to do with the receiver, that amount is different. That ether is different. This is only transaction fee. We are calculating the transaction fee. Okay. If the remaining gas is being sent to sender, then how come receiver receives ether? Come on here. This is for the transaction fee calculation. I'll come to that. I'll add an example. Now you are sender. You want to go to your friend, and you want to give 1 lakh rupees. Okay. You are supposed to give 1 lakh to your friend and he is in different location, and you started traveling. Okay. Will you calculate your, will you petrol you spend for travel in the 1 lakh? Harika? Yes or no? No, right? So that's good. So I hope this answers your question. So we are talking about the transaction fee. We are not talking about the transaction amount. So from that 1 lakh, you won't cut 250 rupees or 250 liters of petrol amount, right? That is one. So a smart contract is deployed over the whole network. If it is deployed over the network, will it redundantly saved on all the nodes of the network? See, again, you're coming back to the same redundancy thing. It's a byte code which is saved. So a byte code will be hardly in few bytes. Okay, so even though the code will be thousands of lines, hardly a smart contract will be less than 10 KB. So KB, so kilobytes of data stored on multiple systems is not a big challenge. So such optimization is already there. And of course, for the trust purpose, you have put the smart contract on blockchain. So of course, all the nodes in the network should consume it. Okay, so that is for the benefit of not having any centralized authority. Okay, is gas has value like ether? Yes, gas price is nothing but it's calculated in GUI. Gas price is GUI. Gas into gas price equal to ether. So GUI is denomination of ether. Gas is the computation power consumed. Gas is computation power consumed by all the nodes by a given smart contract for its execution. Okay. So is it clear, Pranit? Pranit Kumar, did you get the point? Redundantly saved. Did you get the point? Okay, fine. Why it considered all nodes? Because all nodes are executing the smart contract, right? Because every node should validate the transaction. And in Ethereum, a transaction can happen only when the conditions in smart contract are met. Yes, Bitcoin network is better to transact amount. Not necessarily, right? Because for ether to ether transaction also, if there is no smart contract to be executed, then the gas spent will be almost negligible. Okay, for doing a transaction, it is a very little gas. Okay, so nothing like that, Abdul. You can do transaction on any network. It is up to you which currency you want to use, which cryptocurrency you trust. You can do it. If there are some conditions based on which transaction should happen, then you can use only Ethereum, because Bitcoin doesn't support conditional transactions. Okay, so I hope you understood the concept of gas. Now imagine I gave you one example, right? So you want to go to your friend and give 1 lakh rupees. Okay, but you have filled your bike with some petrol so that you can travel to him. So traveled, some petrol is consumed. What happens to the remaining petrol? It will be there with you only, which you can use for another travel. Okay. Now imagine a scenario where you started to go to your friend, but suddenly you came to know somewhere in between that your friend is not there at his location. Okay, you have traveled some distance. Now will you go to your petrol bunk and say, hey, actually I couldn't go and meet my friend for which I got petrol, please pay back the amount? Will you say that? You can't, because you have consumed petrol already. So similarly, in Ethereum, if you have put less petrol because of which you couldn't travel to your friend, okay, yeah, rather than putting your friend went somewhere, we can say you got little petrol, which is not enough to travel to your friend. So somewhere in between you stopped because of lack of availability of petrol. So you can't do, you consumed the petrol already. Okay, you can't get that back. And you can't neither reach to your friend also. The transaction is not yet happened. The money is with you still. So in that case, somewhere you will get petrol and you will go back to your home. That's it. Okay, but the petrol spent already is gone already. So similarly, when a transaction is happening from a sender to receiver, if gas is not enough, that's it. All the gas which is spent till that time is lost. It's a cost for the sender. Okay. Okay, fine. That's good. Okay. So this is what typically happens. So let's look at some. Can't I add more gas in middle of the transaction? No, not possible. That is not possible because gas limit should be defined before deployment of smart contract, because a gas, what is the quantity to be consumed, I think you need to, yeah, sorry, you need to put it before the execution or initiation of the transaction. Okay. And of course, no one can put, no one can decide because the nodes, the number of nodes may fluctuate, right? Some may be high, sometimes it may be more, sometimes few nodes may drop because it's a public network, right? People may add over a period of time, or people may go down over a period of time. So the gas consumed is always dynamic in nature. Okay, so you can't add gas in between. You need to define gas before the initiation of transaction. Why gas is not considered from sending ethers? That's what, the transaction amount you want to send is a different field, gas is a different field. So the network will consume only gas for execution. It will not consume amount from the transaction amount. That is a defined what to say, that is defined in the protocol. That's it. Say for example, you want to do a neft transfer. I think beyond 30,000 or 40,000 there will be a transaction fee. So imagine you want to send 50,000 and the transaction fee is some 30 rupees or 40 rupees. Will 40 rupees be deducted from 50,000 or will that be added to the transaction amount, overall amount? Kalyan? Will transaction fee added as a extra to the transaction amount, or will it be deducted from the total amount? Okay. What is total amount? Overall amount. What is that? It will be added extra, guys. I don't know if you have done some transaction online. Yeah, yes. So 50, yeah, 50,000, 40, correct. So it will not be deducted from the thing. So Kalyan, I hope this answers your question, right? Why gas is not considered from sending ethers? Because it's not expected to do that. Okay, fine. Yeah, good. So any questions on this? Next. And the next component which you need to understand in Ethereum is every Ethereum at the heart of Ethereum protocol. I told you already, Ethereum supports operating system. And operating system for what? For executing the smart contracts. So that is why in Ethereum, every node is a virtual machine. So each node is a Ethereum virtual machine, EVM. And of course, every EVM has ROM, RAM. ROM is something where immutable program code is stored. That means all the smart contracts deployed will be stored on immutable program code ROM. Okay. And there is volatile memory, which is RAM, where it is used just for the purpose of operations. Okay. Random access memory. As in when they want to execute a particular smart contract, that particular smart contract bytecode from ROM is retrieved to RAM and then gets executed. So every Ethereum virtual machine will have a immutable data as well as data which is dynamically changing. Okay. The dynamically changing means don't assume blockchain data. Okay, blockchain data is always immutable. I am talking about the virtual machine. The operating system will be consuming some data, right, all the time from RAM. So that is where the concept of programming comes in Ethereum. Okay, so and of course, like how we have a client application for Bitcoin, similarly for Ethereum also there is a client application. And this client application is again a front-end application, a software application that implements the Ethereum specification and communicates with the peer-to-peer network. Okay, so the client application is the front end with which you can interact. Okay, now there are main 6 implementations of Ethereum protocol. Okay, and in our hands-on we'll be using Geth. Okay, and this Geth implementation of Ethereum protocol is written in Go programming language. And irrespective of whatever programming language based protocol you choose, all will work in the same way. Okay, there is no difference with respect to the language. For example, you expressed something in English, you expressed the same thing in Telugu, you expressed the same thing in Hindi. Will the meaning change? It won't, right? So it's just that there are multiple implementations, and whatever is comfortable for the people, like some people are comfortable writing smart contracts or something in C++, then they will deploy Ethereum protocol which is written in C++. Some are comfortable with Go, they can use Go. Okay, so this is how there are multiple implementations of Ethereum clients. And Geth is command line interface. Okay, it is not like, it doesn't have a GUI. So even the user can interact with it, it is more on a command line interface. Okay, and Geth is the official implementation of Ethereum client. And all other implementations are like some general public out of their interest, they implemented it in other language, but still all the things work the same. Okay, and you know what, by installing and running Geth, you can take part in the Ethereum Frontier Live Network. That means the main net where you can mine real ether, you can transfer funds, you can create contracts and send transactions, you can explore block history. So like how we have in Bitcoin, there is a client application to be downloaded and you need to connect to the network, right? Similarly in Ethereum, you have a Geth, which is the client application with which you can connect to the mainnet and you can do all these operations. Next, you can also create a private Ethereum network. Okay, a private Ethereum network is nothing but you will be using the same Ethereum protocol, but some 4 or 5 friends of you want to create your own Ethereum network. That is private Ethereum network. So in private Ethereum network, that will be nowhere related to the original network. The original mainnet, its ledger, all the dynamics are completely different. So like how in object oriented programming, once you define an object, you can create multiple instances, right? Similarly, in Ethereum, you can create instances of Ethereum network. But this small network which you create for test purpose or only for your internal usage, that is not connected to the mainnet. Okay, so that is why in private network you can give your own network ID and you can give your own Genesis file. But if you look at mainnet, the main chain, all those things are defined by protocol, all those things happen, so you need to just connect as a node, that's it. You can't create a whole network. Okay, so to give you more clarity, in Ethereum there is a possibility for you to create a private Ethereum network which is no way connected to mainnet. Because Ethereum is open source, you can create your own private network. And of course, as a part of hands-on, you will install the Geth, you will get some you will do dummy ether transaction. So just for your understanding on how Ethereum works, how ether transaction happens, as a part of hands-on, we will enable you to transfer dummy ethers in a private Ethereum network, which is only created for practice or for test. Okay. So which is the most popular? Geth is most popular. Okay. And on the network side, of course, the mainnet is the ultimate network where the whole ledger is being maintained. Other than that, for the developers to test their smart contracts, there is a test net called as Ropsten net, which is created. And Ropsten network is created by Ethereum Foundation. So even though it is a public blockchain with same infrastructure, but still you can get the dummy ethers. You can test your smart contract on Ropsten net, everything dummy, just for testing purpose. So that is called as test chain or test net. Okay. And Rinky is again different. It has different what to say protocol. It has its own purpose. So if some new protocol feature or new regulation, like say for example, there is a token issuance on Ethereum network. Tokenization is, again, we'll discuss later. Tokenization is a concept where there are some standard smart contracts which are developed by Ethereum Foundation, and those smart contracts are open source. So if you want to do some do testing on some standards, then of course you can use RingKB. Okay, so every testnet or every mainnet has its own purpose. So you need to choose what to use for your given scenario. Okay, so I think we'll see all these things in hands-on. Okay, but you need to understand uh, Get is a client application, right? And there is a backend blockchain peer-to-peer network. Okay, and for the communication between backend and front end, the client application, there is a API. Okay, all these things are API driven, and that API shares data in JSON format. Okay, I don't know if how many of you are aware of JSON format, but all the API, all the backend will be communicating or passing data in JSON format. Okay. Now let's look at dApps. So what is this dApp? I think I explained you in this what to say elaborate when we discussed the practical use cases.
Mom,
Ethereum.
can I watch my talking dumplings?
Hello. Okay, fine. Yeah. So Ethereum supports dApps, which are nothing but a generalized blockchain, general purpose blockchains to develop decentralized applications. And what is a dApp? At its very least phase, it is one smart contract with a web user interface. That is a dApp. But still, on a higher level, a dApp may have multiple smart contracts and multiple services built on those smart contracts. Okay, so for that, there will be a, so just give me a moment, I'm getting a call, 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so sorry, I got a call, had to take it. Yeah, fine. So now a dApp at least will have one smart contract and web user interface, or max it can have multiple smart contracts as together, giving different services and a web user interface. Okay, so typically this is where your hands-on will start in couple of days, where a dApp is composed of smart contracts which are deployed on the blockchain network, and then a web user interface to trigger the smart contracts from front end. Okay, and other than that, there are many dApps which include multiple decentralized components like peer-to-peer storage protocol, which is called as SWAM, and peer-to-peer messaging protocol, which is called as Whisper. Okay, so these SWAM or Whisper, IPFS, there are multiple decentralized applications which were developed by some other developers, which can be used in dApps. So that means Within a dApp also, you can use other components or other decentralized components developed by other developers. Okay, so that is more like a dApp communicating with other dApp. So even that possibility is there. And you know what? A smart contract can trigger another smart contract also. It's not like one smart contract directly going to network. You can trigger a smart contract within another smart contract and so on. So such flexibility is there while building dApps. How does a typical dApp application looks like? Say for example, the backend, the most backend layer is nothing but the peer-to-peer network, the Ethereum peer-to-peer network. So all the nodes in the network is the backend. And then there is a protocol, and this protocol will communicate with the Ethereum client. Okay, now this Ethereum client should communicate on a client level, right? Sorry, command line level. Okay, so the command line interface which is given by Ethereum client is not enough for us to build web applications, right? So there should be some interface. So that is where if you want to see, blockchain network is a separate network on top of internet, right? So blockchain network has what protocol? For example, Ethereum blockchain has Ethereum protocol. And what about our general internet protocol? TCP/IP and HTTP. Like HTTP is way information is being what to say, a request is sent from the browser to the backend server, right? So if blockchain and internet should communicate with each other, then you need to call the API for JSON format of data. And this data, okay, can be taken through MetaMask or Mist. So you will understand more about MetaMask and Mist. So these are types of wallets, and these are the wallets based on which you can execute smart contracts. Okay, so the JSON format by Ethereum client through the browser will communicate with MetaMask, and it injects information to web3.js. So web3.js is a set of JavaScript libraries which are especially developed to communicate with blockchain networks. Okay, so web3.js will help us to communicate with the backend Ethereum blockchain network, and then you will get a web interface which can be opened in your browser. So the front end infrastructure or frameworks like HTML, CSS, Node.js, AngularJS, React.js, all these things are same whether it is a centralized application or a decentralized application. But what changes? The backend changes. So because of that backend being changed, there are new set of libraries which were developed explicitly for a web application to communicate with the blockchain network. So these are the layers in which you will do your hands-on also. So for example, first you will write a smart contract on IDE, integrated development environment. Okay, now once you have written the dApp, the smart contract, you will deploy on the blockchain network. Once you deploy on the blockchain network, it is called as migration. So you will migrate the smart contract, and migration process involves two things. One, the migration will put the bytecode on all the nodes in the network. Also, it will create a application binary interface for Web3 to communicate with it. Okay, so all this process can be automated by using a framework called as Truffle framework. So as a part of your hands-on, you will work on Geth, you will work on Remix IDE, you will work on MetaMask, you will work on Truffle framework. And once you get accustomed with all these things, you will be able to build small dApps as a practice for your capstone project. Okay, so that is how the next part of the program is. For writing smart contracts, you need to learn Solidity, which is a programming language explicitly developed by Ethereum Foundation. Okay, so what will happen next? You will learn Solidity, then you will work on Geth, then you will get introduced to Remix IDE, and then Truffle framework, then deployment of smart contracts on testnet through MetaMask, and then you will execute the dApp. So this is what we are planning for next coming sessions. Okay, so to just give you an example of how a dApp looks like, Basic Wallet also is a dApp on Ethereum network. And what is the simplest dApp? A transaction dApp. What does it do? Just transfer amount, that's it, to an account. So for example, someone has requested to send $100, for example, just for rent for this month. Okay, there is a request, like how you in GPay you can send request for payment, right? Similarly, in Ethereum you can request a request money. Okay, now for example, the sender says pay. So the moment I say pay, there is a wallet which is nothing but MetaMask. Okay, so you need to correlate this and this. This is on the front end. This is on the back end. What is happening? So on the web browser, where you have some JavaScript, Angular JS or React JS, whatever you use, or basic HTML, you will build a client application which sees where you can see this information. And the moment you say pay, then it will connect to the wallet. The wallet is MetaMask. Then it will go to the nearest node, Ethereum virtual machine. Then all the nodes in the network will execute it. Okay, so that is what is happening here. So the Web3 will call the particular contract using API, and that is considered as an event. So that event will trigger the contract, that will bring a state change, and the state change is confirmed by all the nodes in the network, and then the event will give output that it is confirmed. So this is the front end, and this is what happens technically in the back end. Okay, so Ethereum network, the main network, or it may be local testnet. I told you, right? You can create a private Ethereum network just for test purpose or practice purpose, or Roopston testnet, whatever it is. So the network will have different storages, different instances of contracts, and all the nodes will see it as events. And then once all the nodes comes into consensus, they will confirm and they will send the confirmation to the front end. So this is how a typical dApp looks like. And based on whatever application you build, the front end changes, the operation changes. So the more operations, the more services you want to build, the more smart contracts you need to write. Okay. Okay. So I think, so any questions so far? Just let me know if you have some questions. GUI share to all the nodes, or what's all? Yeah, the transaction fee will be given to the one who solves the puzzle. That logic remains the same. Okay. What is creation of wallet? Yeah, we'll do creation of wallet also as a part of hands-on. So any other questions? Event sent by nodes after validation. Yes. Yes. After validation, you'll get a confirmation message which is a event. So event is a web application. Okay. So you need to write the events. Nodes will execute, validate. That's it. You need to fetch that information. That thing should happen from web application only. You need to write somewhere in the code for the validation to fetch it, to fetch the result. Say for example, Block Explorer. What is Block Explorer? Yeah, just like normal APIs. Correct. You will fetch the data, right? If I initiate a transaction on my own node, should I still use gas? Yes, of course. Because all the, whether you are a miner or a user or a developer, if you are consuming computation power of the network, you should spend gas. There is no partiality because you are maintaining a node. You will be given some concession, nothing like that. All are equal. The number of operations not known, then how much gas to be spent? That's what, right? For a given smart contract, you can just, usually there is a limit in smart contract size, hardly 10 KB, I guess. I don't remember it, but there is a limit of a smart contract. So for a typical smart contract, you can put some 50,000 gas. What's wrong? It will just come back. Only sender spend gas for all nodes. Sender spends gas for network. Okay. For a sender, network is what is visible. It's not one node or all nodes or whatever. See, for example, you are doing a bank transaction. Do you know what happens on back end? How the transaction fee, who gets the transaction fee and all? You are not worried, right? The back end thing. So for a sender, it is just, gas is just a field. And sometimes even the developers can put somewhere like in brackets. Okay, so put some X gas or pre autofill the gas amount also. I mean that depends on how you build the application. Okay, so the entire gas I spend on my transaction will be awarded to me as I will use my own computation power. I didn't understand, Balaji. So you are maintaining the node. Are you maintaining the node? No, by in that slot, in that time slot, if you get opportunity to add block, then only you will get the gas. See, gas is not sent. Gas into gas price equal to in ether only. See, it's a transaction fee. It is transaction fee which is spent, which is sent. So who gets the transaction fee, Balaji? In general, in Bitcoin? Same here. Why are you confused? There, transaction fee is equal to 0.7 into transaction amount, 0.5 into transaction amount. But in Ethereum, it is gas consumed into gas price. The way we calculate the transaction fee involves gas. Okay, but gas is not sent. Gas is just a number. Gas number of gas into price is equal to transaction fee. So the transaction fee will go to the node which solves the puzzle. Yes, of course. Yes. Yeah, deployment of smart contract also costs. Execution or trigger also costs. Because write is nothing but deployment, right? So deployment is some storage on all the nodes in the network. So of course it will cost. So any further questions? Because probably from tomorrow or day after tomorrow, uh, we will start the solidity basics and all. Okay, so if you have any questions, if you are still in confusion on how things work or how things go, let me know. Yeah, you will be given some Word doc. I told you, right? I'll share it today. Do both read and write operations. Okay. Yeah, once a smart contract is compiled, the bytecode will be stored on the blockchain network. So of course the bytecode is all ones and zeros, right? So no one can read them. There is no need of encryption because smart contract is not being stored as it is as a code, right? So you need not worry about encryption or hashing. It is the binary result of compiler which is being stored on Ethereum network. Okay, so no encryption, nothing. Okay, now, yeah, so now, okay, 1 second, there is one more question, I guess. So if a company approaches to develop a system which works on blockchain technology, then are we supposed to create a private Ethereum network? Yes. Yes, if you want, you can use private Ethereum network, which is part of Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. So Ethereum for enterprise also things are going on. So Ethereum is becoming private and public. So the public mainnet for general public, private for businesses. Yes, that's correct. You can create a private Ethereum network, and but the only thing is, in private Ethereum network, all the nodes infrastructure will be maintained by different organizations, right? So in that case, the concept of gas, the concept of transaction fee, all those things are irrelevant, right? Because if the nodes are maintained by general public, then each node should be paid because the node is maintained by general person and the only income he gets is that. But in Ethereum, the concept, there will be little difference on it. We'll discuss when we discuss the difference between public and private blockchain in the end. So after hands-on, I'll take a session on Hyperledger, which is a private blockchain completely. Okay. So any other questions? Okay. So now let's look at Ethereum smart contract in 4 points. One, the smart contracts are simple computer programs. Okay, so you need not assume that as some other code, but it is same as what you usually write in your day-to-day programs, right? So it's a simple computer programs. And one more thing, these contracts are not legal in nature. Just because you have put a business agreement or a agreement on a contract as a smart contract, you codified it, it doesn't mean it gets legal protection. Okay, so but now there are a lot of law professionals and global law bodies who are trying to bring standard templates of smart contracts which can be used for legal purposes. So once that happens, I think lot of business transactions, lot of business agreements, everything will happen on blockchain network, but still it is not yet done. Okay, so it is just on the mutual understanding of the stakeholders involved, smart contracts are being written. Second, immutable. Even smart contracts are immutable. Once deployed, the code of a smart contract cannot change. Okay, and someone asked, is code encrypted in blockchain? See, code hash, if you remember, every contract, every smart contract has an account associated with it, and the account will calculate the hash of the code and it will store it in the code hash field. But code itself is not what to say, encrypted somewhere or something. Okay, and unlike with traditional software, the only way to modify a smart contract is to deploy a new instance. That means if there is a new agreement based on which, or new business rules based on which you want to have a smart contract, you can't update the old one. You need to create a new smart contract with updated rules. The old one will be there, but you will just change the API. Okay, from front end to back end, you will change the API and it will be taking to different smart contract. Third, deterministic. The outcome of the execution of a smart contract is the same for everyone who runs it. Because if one node executes a smart contract and output is different from what other node executes, it is undeterministic. You can't do anything, right? But smart contracts are deterministic. And given the context of the transaction that initiated its execution, the state of the Ethereum blockchain at the moment of execution is what will be changed once once a smart contract gets executed. Okay, and all you need to understand from this point is any node which executes the smart contract will get the same output, and that is how they compare what is received and what is they calculated. If both match, they confirm it, they validate it. Okay, now looking at the Ethereum virtual machine, EVM context, smart contracts operate with a very limited execution context, because for a given smart contract, there are some states which can be changed as a new transaction, right? So whatever transaction data which is relevant to that particular smart contract only can be modified. All other data is not at all accessible for a smart contract. Okay. So I think probably the practical side of the solidity and how things work probably we'll see in coming sessions. Okay. Yeah, so I think today we have finished the session a little fast. So any questions on this so far? You can just explore. Okay, you can explore Ethereum as well. So from tomorrow we'll start the solidity programming basics. Okay. Okay. What is Viper? Uh, I didn't get you, Navin. Did you see Viper somewhere? Where did you see that? You saw it somewhere and asking, or did you see it somewhere here? Anything should be revised before learning Solidity. Not required, not required. Okay, I seen it in Remix browser IDE. Okay. No, actually, other than Solidity also, there are some people are building libraries to support other programming languages also. Okay, so like how we have Solidity has its own syntax and all. Today Viper is, I just saw, Viper is Python based programming for writing smart contracts again. So other than Solidity you can write Python based smart contracts using Viper. Okay, so it's a new addition to the programming stack. Okay, is it clear, Venkat? Okay, once tell deterministic. Okay, now deterministic is nothing but, see, every transaction should be validated by all the nodes in the network. And in Ethereum, a transaction is triggered by a smart contract, right? So, if a transaction is correct or not can be decided only when all the nodes in the network execute the same smart contract and if it is getting the same transaction output or outcome. So, for that purpose, any node in the network executing same smart contract will give the same output, so there is no difference. That is what is called as deterministic. See, that is, we take it for granted, right? That is common sense, right? For example, you wrote a C program and for a given same input the output will be always same, right? Is it same, Venkat Sai? You wrote a C program for a given same inputs, the output will be same how many ever times you execute the program. So similarly, here in blockchain, a smart contract is executed by different nodes, but of the same network. So the output should be same. Then only all the nodes can come into consensus and confirm the transaction, right? Is it clear, Venkat Sai? Okay, fine, good. So I think we have come long way discussing blockchain, basics of blockchain, then cryptography, distributed computing, game theory, and then we connected the dots. We understood Bitcoin and lots of concepts in Bitcoin. Then we moved to Ethereum. Okay, and today, like, almost all theoretical aspects of Ethereum are done. So I hope most of you are kind of linking all the concepts, linking all the things. Okay. So try to explore even before tomorrow's class. You can just go through some YouTube videos on what is a smart contract, some smart contract examples, what is solidity, some solidity basics. So you can just go through a couple of videos available online. Okay. So let's catch up tomorrow and let's get started with solidity. Okay. Yeah. So Raghava Kumar raised hand. So what? Any question, Raghava? Hello. Any apps need to be installed? All those things will be taken care. So tomorrow, one of our developers, Mr. Shiva, he will be taking all your hands-on program. Okay. So anyways, I'll be moderating the session, but still he will be taking all the hands-on sessions. So he will help you giving all the links, all documentation required to install things, execute things and all. Okay. What are the other popular blockchain networks other than Ethereum, Hyperledger? R3 Corda is one popular. Quorum is another. Okay. And of course, there are different blockchain applications, like private blockchain applications, where people will write their own smart contracts or chain code. But I think hardly there are 4 to 5 platforms. So if you can learn all of this, if you just get accustomed with all of this, getting a blockchain developer job is a cakewalk. It's easy. Okay. So focus. This is best opportunity. There are very few blockchain developers in the ecosystem. So if you can focus constantly and if you work hard, I think getting a blockchain job and having a bright career is just your hard work. I mean, it is just nearby. Okay, guys, let's catch up tomorrow.